good to go?
Good.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And today I have an amazing guest coming on. I'm really excited to have her on because it is a topic that's very important, especially for the parents who are living this. But I have the wonderful Dr. Norrine Russell here talking to us about what it's like to parent and work with children that learn differently than their neurodivergent children. And she'll speak from her personal experience and as well her professional experience. So it's a lot of wealth of information that's going to be shared here today. Thank you so much, Norrine, for coming on and for sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Danielle, I'm thrilled to be here. I really am. I'm so glad we've connected, and I'm excited to talk to your audience today about, kids who are neurodiverse and what do they need?
Exactly. And that's so important. It boils down to not what we think they need, but what they actually need. And you mentioned that a little bit in the work that you do. If we could start off as an introduction, because you talk about, of course, everybody talks about the challenges about we're raising neurodiverse children, but you also talk about the rewards. So can you kind of share with us what those challenges are and what those rewards are, most importantly?
Sure. So I am the mom of two teenagers who have ADHD, autism, and anxiety. They have the same diagnoses, but their personalities are dramatically different. And the road to diagnosis and treatment and management was really different for both of them. My son was diagnosed earlier than my daughter. My son has a little bit more challenges when it comes to the anxiety and mood piece of things. And so, you would think, oh, two kids with the same diagnoses, you're following the same path, but you're not at all. Challenges, I think, for me, I definitely felt alone. I think it's a very lonely path, even though we are starting to, in our worlds, in our countries, in our communities, have more awareness and understanding of neurodiversity. You still are surrounded primarily by parents who their kids don't have ADHD or autism or learning differences. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is just that feeling of loneliness. And then what goes along with that is doubting yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Am I seeking out the right experts? Should I be getting a diagnosis? Am I disciplining the right way at home? Are we choosing the right school? Because you have a kid who is a little bit different, but also so full of potential, and you want to make the right choices, but your child needs some things that are different from typical kids. So I think the loneliness and the self-doubt are two of the biggest challenges. In terms of, the joys and the rewards, I think that there is a tremendous feeling of satisfaction knowing that, what, I did this. I'm doing this. I'm doing a great job as an autism mom. I'm doing a great job as an ADHD mom. It's not easy, and we're doing great, and we are surviving some days and thriving some other days. But I think there is a greater appreciation of like how hard you've worked as a parent, and the fact that you haven't been on an easy path. The other thing I would say that is often part of this experience is you become very grateful for the small things in life. And so, if you have a day that goes by and your child has a great report from school in kindergarten, you really get to relish that and appreciate that. I think that when you have kids who struggle either emotionally or cognitively, and there is a good day or a major accomplishment or a moment where, you know, you get great news from the teacher, you really do have a lot of appreciation for that. That's been my experience anyway, is that there's a lot of kind of pride that can go with having tackled this challenge, and then a lot of gratitude that comes from, you know, seeing the milestones, both big ones and small ones.
Yeah, and I can see that you've brought up all of the major points of parents who go through this, and you could tell that you experienced it personally, because that's definitely, those are the struggle, the challenges, and then that kind of feeling of, wow, my child had a good day, or wow, this is working, and you know, you don't feel as alone or as weighed down as you normally would. You can tell, definitely tell you've lived it yourself, and that's why you're kind of sharing it. I skipped ahead because I thought that was such a good question to ask with the challenges, but the rewards. But you've shared a little bit of your personal experience. Can you kind of share with us briefly how you got to make this your work as well, and help as many families as possible?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. Um, So my kids currently are 14 and 16. And before I had them, I worked in two different fields. I was an academic. I taught at the university level, and I loved that. It was great doing research, teaching undergraduates. And then I had a bit of a career shift, and I moved into nonprofit work and working in the fields of youth development and helping middle school and high schoolers with self-esteem and emotional intelligence and social skills. And then when I had my son, and I think some of your parents can probably relate to this, he was really complicated. And at the time, I was the CEO of a relatively large nonprofit here in Tampa, Florida, where I live. And it was really difficult to balance all of the things with being a new mom. And my son had some other things that he was born with that were challenging, and we were trying to figure out food allergies and eczema. And so what happened in a nutshell really was that I retired from nonprofit work. And then several of my colleagues here in Florida said, oh, could you work with this student? Could you work with this student? And you know, they don't need therapy, but they need some mentoring. They need some coaching. Well, Danielle, this was 16 years ago. The field of coaching
Wow.
was in such a different place. And I really didn't necessarily have any vision for this.
Mhm.
And now, 16 years later, we have all worked really hard at the practice, and Russell Coaching is now the largest student coaching practice in the United States. We work with students across the world. We have students in Canada, in the UK, in Dubai, in South America, all across the United States. And our specialty is helping, honestly, kids like my own kids who have
Mhm.
ADHD, autism, or anxiety, who really 100% can be successful in school. They have the potential, they have the desire, they have the intellect, but there are specific life skills that are a little bit delayed that can get in the way. We refer to those things as executive functioning skills. So now I am the owner and director of Russell Coaching for Students, and that's what I do, is supervise our academic coaches who help students who are neurodiverse in one way or more than one way be successful in school and in life. And it's really rewarding because a lot of parents out there are not aware that these services exist and can be so helpful. And so to be doing something tangible, to be helping other families when, you know, I've been through my own journey of figuring out what do my two need, it's just really rewarding.
Yeah. That is incredible, especially the fact that it's now worldwide. You've mentioned earlier that a lot of the times as a parent, you feel alone. You feel like you're the only one going through this, and you're reaching out people across the world. So it's not just us. It's not just our household. It really is on an international level. Everybody parent at some point goes through a struggle. So to have that support and for it to be welcomed, I think is such a great thing for families who need it. We're going to talk about that coaching side of things for academic and personal success for our children. But I want to touch on the one topic that we hear a lot. We hear about a lot right now, but we kind of always put it aside, and that's self-care for the parents. Uh, we always hear about self-care, and of course, if you're going through it as a parent, the last thing you can think of is meditating for 10 minutes, because that's usually what we associate self-care to. But can you kind of talk to us about why it is so important for parents to take that time for themselves, replenish, recharge the battery so that they can show up better for their children?
I'm so glad that this was on your list of topics for us to talk about, because what I want most of all is for your listeners to realize that parenting has changed dramatically. And we are not supposed to be parenting alone. We are supposed to be parenting in community and in family, right? With built-in social support. And that's not the way it's happening these days for most people. And so even parents with what we might call typical, even parents with what we might call easy kids, parenting is really hard work. And we are not supposed to be doing that on our own or just with a partner. So this topic is one that makes me both angry and sad, because what we're doing in our conversation about this is saying, here, mom, here, dad, here, parent, here's another thing for you to put on your individual to-do list. If you could individually take care of your mental and physical health, that'd be great. What we really need is to be advocating for more systemic help, right? More respite care, better support in school, more mental health services available for families. And so I think I have a little different take on this than a lot of people who talk about self-care, because what I think we need better is system care for parents, all parents, but especially parents who would characterize themselves as special needs parents. For me, I know, I just do a lot better when I get to have my quiet cup of coffee in the morning. And if that means that I'm going out and spending $5 on a cup of coffee because I like the experience of having a 10-minute drive in the car and walking into the neighborhood coffee shop and having cheerful, happy people greet me, then you know what? It's worth it to me to start my day on that note. I think for me, another aspect of self-care is I have let go of some of the household responsibilities that people might think, oh, you should be doing that. We have someone who comes and cleans the house, which some people think of as a luxury, but it's not in my world. It's self-care in my world. And I don't happen to have family nearby. And so anything that someone can help me to get done so that I have time to spend with my kids, relating, not just managing their needs, right? But relating and connecting and hanging out. And then things that relieve me of stressors and anxieties so that I can have some downtime as well. And those are just what I've made my financial priorities. And I would just say to parents, figure out what it is that gives you peace of mind and do that. And don't worry about if your neighbor's doing that, if your sister-in-law would approve, if your mom would approve, because we're doing a really hard thing here, parenting these days. And whatever it is that gives you some peace of mind or calms you down, it is worth it. And you are worth it for your own self.
Yes. Oh, I'm with you on that one. I will preach that as well. There's such a stigma about getting help like that. You're supposed to be the super mom or the super parent and be able to do everything. And I've been in circles where the parents were actually bragging about all the extra things that they are doing to burn themselves out. Really, that's what it boils down to. But yes, if you can invest in yourself and your health, and get that outside help, the system care. I'm going to be using that from now on. I love that. It's there is self-care, but system care needs to happen as well. It's so important. Thank you for sharing that, because it's hard to have those conversations with people who say, but I can't have somebody come into my house to clean.
Oh,
It's like, well, why not? If you know, if you
yeah,
lived with 4 other people in your house, your siblings at home, you used to do chores to help around the house. Why can't you
oh,
have
yeah,
that as a
yeah.
grown up too? Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And whatever it is, if it's someone to clean your house, if it's someone to organize your garage, if it's someone to detail your car, what is the thing that takes stress and anxiety off your plate and makes you feel that your world is in order so you can focus on you, your work, your kids,
Yeah, I love
and
that.
that should just be normalized in our culture. We are not meant to do everything.
That is so true. That is so true. I say that in my book as well. It's this parenting was not meant to be hard. We had a village to back us up. Uh, so the minute we took that village away, that's where we started struggling. And it's so true. We need to open it up again and build our village.
We
Which,
do.
yeah. And that leads me to the next question, because to find that village, to find the support that you need may not be that easy. But what kind of positive support can parents look out for in order to help their children succeed both personally and academically?
Yeah. I think the most important thing here is realizing how much stronger your village or your team will be once you kind of realize you have to be an advocate, right?
Mhm.
That was such a mindset shift for me when my kids went to elementary school. Um, I kind of just thought, oh, I'm sending them to school. School will take care of it. I didn't
Right.
have any idea at the time that I was going to have to really get involved and I was going to have to maybe drive some things. And it's not that they weren't at good schools. They were at good schools and they had very caring teachers. But what my kids needed, both of them, was a little bit above and beyond what a typical child needed. And so I think in terms of forming a support team or a village, it's really about recognizing that no one's going to do it for you. School's not going to do it for you. Your psychologist or psychiatrist is not going to do it for you. Your therapist is not going to be, the case manager. Once we realize that we have to be doing a lot of communicating about our child and a lot of care coordination, it's been my experience, quite honestly, that people are happy to help and people feel very honored to
Mhm.
be on your child's team. When I look back over the last, several years, my kids have had these teachers who have truly been exceptional and they have cared deeply about my kids and they have invested of themselves, right? But it's because I knew that we were going to be asking for a little bit more than usual, and I built that relationship. And so, you know, I think that's what it comes down to, is taking an active role in building that network, that support team. And, one of the things that I frequently recommend to parents is don't wait for the 3-month appointment with the doctor. If you've got questions, make an appointment, go in, right? If you're
Yeah.
concerned about this part of, your child's behaviors or their symptoms, call the doctor, right? Like, engage people in solving these problems with you. We're not alone when we have a team. And it's so helpful to have different perspectives, a psychological perspective, a therapeutic perspective, a medical perspective, an education perspective. So go ask people, get them engaged. I really can't say that I personally, over years of asking a lot of my team, have ever felt disappointed or
Mhm.
that I've been given less than what I asked for. People want to help. They do.
They really do. That surprised me too, as when I experienced it myself, is when I finally accepted the fact that I wasn't going to be able to do all of it by myself, I start asking, a lot of people were just standing by waiting. They want to help. They just don't know how they need to show up for you. So just they're waiting for you to ask. If you're waiting for them to offer, just think that they don't know how to help. So you're the one who, yeah, to make that first step, ask for help, and then you can adjust from there and see where you really do need the support. I think that's great. Um, we need to we do need to. You're still kind of running the show. Nobody's going to take over, but at least you know where you need that help and you go and get it. It's so important. I do have one more question, but I'm not gonna do it justice with the way of explaining. So I know you're gonna sort that out. But we were talking in a conversation we've had before about the difference in, as of course, as a parent for neurodiverse children, there's a lot of patience involved, a lot of tolerance, but there's support as well. Sometimes there's a fine line between, am I supporting my child through this right now, or am I just tolerating it, or am I just being patient? Can you kind of explain the difference? Because I think that's a crucial point for parents to understand the difference between being there to support your child or just tolerating what's happening. If you could shed the light on that for us, please.
This is a tough one, right? Because we all think, okay, is this just typical child behavior or typical teen behavior? Is this related to ADHD? Is this part of autism? You know, how much do we tolerate and wait for brain development versus, you know, engage in getting some support, whether that's therapeutic support, whether it's coaching for the child or parent coaching or training. And, you know, I think that it's really important to pay attention to your gut. When you feel stuck or you feel like your child is stuck, then it's always better to reach out for help and see who can help, right? And you might ask someone who can provide the right help the first time. You might have to, you know, ask a second or a third person. But for me, I think when I'm trying to draw the line between, okay, do I need to just be more patient, more loving, more kind versus do I need to get some support? I really try to make that choice on the basis of, is anyone suffering? Like, am I bothered by this to the point where it takes up, you know, sleep at night, where it preoccupies every minute that I'm in my 5-minute quick shower, you know? And is my child upset? Are they crying? Are they unhappy? Are they miserable? Are they reporting that they feel like they can't do anything right? And so that's kind of my own line in the sand that I use. And I would say I counsel the same thing when I do parent coaching, right? There's going to be a fair amount of frustrations that you're going to have to sit with and live with and wait for brain development. But if someone is miserable or unhappy or crying or, you know, can't do something else because of this challenge, then I think it's time to reach out for support from a coach or a therapist or the doctor.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. When it doesn't feel right anymore. Yeah. Is it just me being a little bit more irritable today, or is it really something that's affecting my entire family? Yeah, it's a great benchmark. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
We've just actually gone through this with my son and, you know, the teenage years, I have personally found to be a wonderful and very enjoyable time with parenting. But it's been interesting. My son is 16 and a half and really having some very typical adolescent behaviors, like not rules, not necessarily being so respectful to his parents, not necessarily being completely truthful about things. And I'll tell you, Danielle, it was really funny because I'm so used to putting on the lens of, okay, so what part of neurodiversity is this related to? That it was a really weird experience, I don't know, 4 months ago to think, you know what? We're just having normal adolescent behavior here. But The other thing, Danielle, was I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm fed up, exhausted, cranky with him. He doesn't feel good about himself. And so, we started back with therapy, or what I would call typical adolescent transitions, because I was super frustrated and he felt terrible about himself. And so here we are dealing with normal adolescent things. And I don't really think he's experiencing them any differently, even though he has ADHD and autism.
That's great. Well, it's not great that you, but I understand what you mean that you're so into neurodivergent mode that
Mhm.
to see that, wait a minute, this is on the typical line. Um, that's interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And to realize, okay, I don't have to tolerate this. We have to have standards. We have to hold him accountable.
Yeah,
And this is just what's developmentally appropriate. And it's
yeah,
really the first time in parenting him that I've thought, oh, we're just having a normal parenting challenge. And it's just funny to me. But yeah, so we're learning how to help him develop into a responsible young man with good values and good character. And it's not really about ADHD or anxiety. So I just wanted to share that because it's a little bit of a funny story in that you kind of think everything's always going to be about the fact that they're neurodiverse, but it might not be.
it might not be. I like that. It's the first time I hear somebody just flat out say this is actually just adolescence is just a whole other world, isn't it? It doesn't matter which angle you're experiencing it. It's just a beast on its own. And I think it's great that yeah, you're experiencing just a part of the development that is just all new to us to navigate. I think it's great. It never ends. I could talk to you so much about this, but I'm gonna bring it back to school because academic success is a huge stress for parents. Like you say, you could be in the best schools, the best programs, that with the best teachers, but the reality is your child is not the only one in the classroom as well, and they're at school a good portion of the day. So oh, oh, we've talked about this before, and I love the way that you put it is the role that the teacher plays in setting up a child for academic success. Can you kind of touch on that about what that role is for a teacher when it comes, especially for neurodivergent children? There is there's something there that needs to be talked about.
For sure there is. And, um, especially in the world of special education or exceptional student education, whatever it's called in the area that you live in, we focus so much on the plan, the 504, the IEP, the student success plan, and what the goals are and what the strategies are and what outcomes we want. We lose sight of what the single most important thing is. And you know what that is? It's the relationship between the student and the teacher. That is the single most important thing. And it is in everything. It is in a therapeutic relationship. It is in the relationship with the doctor. It is in our marriages and our intimate relationships. And so we have to really keep that in mind because everything can get very legalistic for our kids who have plans at school. But that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that they have a teacher who understands them, who understands their makeup, who understands what motivates them, who understands what makes them feel good, and who understands that even when the student is having, I don't know, people call it challenging behaviors. I just like to
Mm,
call it symptoms. That child is doing their best. And so what we need most of all are teachers who are skilled at relationship building and who can see that kids are truly doing their best. And then I think that's where we come into play as parents also, is helping that teacher understand it might not look to you like they are trying their best, but they are. And
yeah,
so let's have a conversation about that. That I think is where I feel like the entire education system needs to sort of revisit education for every child, right? But
Yeah.
especially for kids who have, exceptional needs. We know that people need safety and security in order to learn. And we know that a connection with school is the most important predictor of school success. And so do all the things, parents, create a relationship with that teacher, acknowledge their efforts. It's worth every bit of time that you spend sending in an extra thank you note, sending in a holiday card, because teachers have a really difficult job these days. And so while we don't have an easy job as parents, teachers
Yeah.
don't either. And so every bit of gratitude and acknowledgement of the relationship that they form with your child is just so vitally important. And I'm finding that I need to remind myself of that now that both of mine are in high school. And both mine do online school, so we don't have a lot of in-person interaction with their teachers. They both have tutors for different things, but I find myself really having to consciously remind myself, oh, like, when is Teacher Appreciation Week? Like, what am I doing for the holidays to thank the teachers? Because
Yeah.
as your kids get older, it becomes sort of less supported, and then my kids are like homeschooling / online school. But the work that their teachers are doing is still just as important. And that relationship is just as important.
That's a good point. We tend to talk a lot about what the teachers seem to not be doing, but yes, to appreciate the fact that they don't have it easy. I've worked with a teacher. She was one of the best teachers in the schools, but she had 14 students in a class of 30 that had an individualized learning plan. And no assistant, no nothing, no outside help. So she was burning. She was doing the best that she could, and you could tell it was getting to her because she wanted to help. What can you do? You have half of your class needs special
Right.
attention, and she was by herself. So yes, appreciate those. And I would just actually add to that and ask you, what does effective communication look like between the parents and the teachers when you do need to talk about the symptoms? I'm going to use that term from now on as well. Symptoms, or what are the next steps for their academic success? What would that look like to you? What would your advice be to establish that good communication?
I do think it's an important differentiation. I think we really went wrong in the last few decades calling these things behavioral disorders, because when people think about behaviors, they think about choices that people are making, and they think about deliberate choices, and they sort of impose on kids, you're making bad choices when you are inattentive, or you are squirmy or wiggly, or you're unfocused, or you're hyper fixated on your special interests. And behaviors and symptoms are two different things. And so I would love it if you would start using the word
Oh,
symptoms.
yeah,
Because here's the thing, right? We don't talk about the kid who has a seizure disorder as having behavior problems, right?
that's it.
We don't talk about the kid who has cancer as having behavior problems, right? There's a whole different feel to it. And so if
Yeah.
we could really firmly put neurodevelopmental disorders back in the language of what are the symptoms? What are you seeing at school? That's what I want to know. And I think one of the easiest ways to do this is at the beginning of the year for parents to say to teachers, you know what, my child does have ADHD. You'll see when look up their file that they have an individual learning plan, and they do or they don't take medication. And I'd like to be able to check in with you, whatever it is, after the first 2 weeks of school, at every report card marking period. But I'd really like to know what you're seeing in terms of symptoms in the classroom.
Mm.
How well controlled is my child's ADHD? Or how is their autism affecting their social skills or their ability to understand directions in class, you know? And I think for parents to set that tone of, this is medical information that I'm going to bring back to my child's other professionals on their team, their medical professionals, their therapy professionals. I think it just sets a different tone than waiting to get a behavioral note or a referral. You know, if you reach out and you say, you know, my child suffers from autism and anxiety, you're likely to see them chewing on their shirt, chewing on their pencils. You're likely to see them distracted when there's a lot of chaos in class. That's because their nervous system is overwhelmed. These are some things that can help. I think for parents to take that first step and really establish it as medical communication back and forth, not a behavioral report card. There's nothing I hate worse than the behavioral report card. It's not behaviors.
Yes, I like that. It's not extra work on the school side of things because it's just like approaching an anaphylactic allergy. These are the symptoms. If you see my child swelling up and coughing and this, you need to make the necessary
Yeah.
steps to prevent an outburst. It's
Yes.
the same thing in this case. If you see
Same
them,
thing.
that if the stimming increases, is they're not comfortable. So instead of adding to that and aggravating it even more, what can we do to calm it down? I like that point of view. I think that just gave me the visual to be able to relay
Right.
that message. It's a symptom. It's not a choice. It's not just them giving you a hard time. It's a symptom. I really like that. It's so important. I know my listeners are going to appreciate that. We were also talking about, because now we're talking about, academic success, well, usually right up to high school. But there's a lot of parents, actually, I think most parents kind of have that in the back of their mind the entire time is what's going to happen to my child when they're adults. Once they're out of school, they don't get that support if they are getting it. And what's the missing link to get your children to transition from that? I'm still structured right up until high school to this great big world that we're not ready for in the adulthood. Do you have a great point of view on that one? Can you share that with us?
You know, I think it's really about being conscious of what life skills and independent skills your child has and what they need to be developing as a teenager, right? And it's making those things a priority during high school. My child needs to know how to make an appointment at the doctor's office. My child needs to know how to open up a bank account. My child needs to know how to go and ask for help from someone. And the time that we should be evaluating those skills and working on those skills is in high school. But so many times, right, our high schoolers are busy being, super competitive. They have to be the uber high school students so they can get into all these colleges. And it's a competitive world out there. Nobody's going to tell you it's not, right? But we can't delay their life skills development in order for them to be, the captain of 3 academic teams and the president of 4 school clubs, and then get to college and they have no idea how to manage themselves, how to take care of, their apartment or their car, or really even their relationships. And so there are a lot of great resources out there about what life skills high schoolers need. And I just would say to parents lovingly and kindly, these need to get practiced deliberately during high school. And this is also another area where I think coaching can be really helpful, because sometimes our atypical kids are a little bit delayed in these life skills or executive functioning skills. And a coach who specializes in, kids who are neurodiverse can help build those kinds of skills, and take it off the parents' plate a little bit, and then as a side note to that, I would say also be aware of what services are available in your community. We talk about system care, right? But there are a lot of there are a lot of communities where there is vocational rehabilitation or job skill training. And so see what's out there that your child might be eligible for. Talk with the high school counselor about what are some good courses that my child can take that will genuinely, truly be helpful in the real world. And give yourself permission to let your child take those classes and not another honors or another AP class or something like that. Yes, we need our kids to get an education. We also need them to be ready to be citizens, in our community.
Yeah, such a good point. In coaching, a lot of people don't necessarily like to take that approach, but sometimes hearing it from somebody else rather than the parents, we could say word for word what the parents are saying, but um, they'll listen to the coach rather than the parent because it's coming from a third party, a neutral third party. I think it's great, and that those are important. There are more and more programs out in the community that help, especially with over here in Ottawa. We have one organization in particular that will, from high school, so teenagers right up till young adults, take them out weekly to have that social interaction outside of the home. How do you order your coffee at the coffee shop? What kind of conversation can you have while you're at the cash paying, and ordering? And what do you do when you have to order, when you have you go into the movies and that whole process, especially if there's a lot of sensory stimulation in those environments, they need to they coach them through this. And I think it's very helpful. So yeah, that
Yeah.
is important to set our kids up for success in their lives as adults.
I want to say too, there's a real value in having an outside professional. As parents, of course, we give it our all. Of course, I have worked with my son on his resume and job application skills. But as a parent, I have kind of one way of explaining that. I have my perspective,
Yeah.
and parents don't have the experience of, oh, I've done this with, 40, 50, 60 kids, and I've tried these techniques, or I've tried this way of explaining it. There is, and I want to kind of make this point today, if you'll allow me to, there is a professional expertise that not all, but many coaches have, that is very helpful to the teenager. And so, yes, there's an advantage sometimes to it not being mom or dad. And there's an advantage to that because sometimes it lowers the emotional valence. But a truly good coach, a coach who is experienced, qualified, brings a level of expertise that a parent doesn't have.
Mm,
And it's not that the parent isn't a great parent or doesn't have expertise as a parent, but if your child is struggling with, I just don't want to get a job, I don't want to ever get a job, I can't apply, I can't interview, there's so far we can take them as parents, right? But then there's a time to call in someone who can help, who's done this before, who has lots of different, techniques and strategies that they can try. And, it's more than just another caring adult in your teenager's life. So coaching is a little difficult because it's unregulated, right? And anybody can call themselves a coach, and you really have to, as a parent, look at what are the professional qualifications, what is the experience level. But, in the last 16 years, having built my coaching practice, I've become a huge advocate of coaching
mhm.
because it really teaches skills and strategies. It gets at what are the practical challenges, what is getting in the way, and how do we overcome that? And therapy has its place and medication has its place, but I firmly believe coaching also has its place.
I think that is, yeah, I agree, that missing link to put it all together. And just like anything else you would do for your child, if you are looking for a coach, interview more than one. You know, if you were in, it's just like when they're babies and you're looking for, let's say, a nanny, let's say for, you wouldn't just interview the one and take it. You would kind of
Yes.
look around and see which one would best fit your child's energy levels. It's the same with coaching, and that's how you get to know exactly what you're taking on. And I think it's important, especially that when we're looking at uh, you're saying creating incredible citizens of the world, and they are capable. We just have to give them the tools to get them there. So I think it's important. I could talk to you. That would be an entirely other episode. I could talk to you forever on this one, but let's talk about what's coming up for you. Do you have anything new? Any programs that you could kind of let us know about, so people that are interested could come to you?
Sure. Yeah, I would invite everyone to check us out at russellcoaching.com. And we're always trying to stay ahead of the game. So our kind of bread and butter is weekly academic coaching, helping students who are neurodiverse be successful in school. During springtime, we have a huge focus on spring survival, right? Don't let the end of the year get the best of you. We're all exhausted, and we can help you get through those last 4 to 8 weeks of school. During the summer, we do special programs on executive functioning, on stress and coping. We help a lot of high schoolers with college essays and applications. So that's all really fun. And then you and I have talked a little bit. I have a podcast called Breaking Out of the Box, ADHD, Autism, and Anxiety. So I would, invite your listeners to check out my podcast, Breaking Out of the Box, and would love to get any feedback that your listeners have about that. And if you have a child who has any of those diagnoses, hopefully one or more of the episodes of Breaking Out of the Box can be helpful for you.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. And I'll put all of that information into the description so people can have a look at it. But that podcast is most definitely important to listen to and see. I don't believe in boxes. Let's get rid of that box and let's just be us. I love it. Thank you so much. I do always kind of end on both on a personal note, but a fun note of question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what would you like to be when you grow up?
Okay, so I'm not sure, Danielle, if you should have given me any advance warning about this. And I'm not sure that this is a very politically correct thing to say, but you know what I want to be today?
What's that?
I want to be a billionaire today
Oh, yes. Why not?
because I want to have resources to make significant differences in the world. I want to be able to fund initiatives that create healthier kids, stronger families, bring community supports back. And so I know being a billionaire isn't really like what we think of as having a calling, but when I look around at what I think the needs are of children, families, and communities, I want to be a
Yeah,
billionaire.
I love that. You can serve so many more people that way. And it's great. That's what I love about this question. There's no wrong answer, right? It's you. It's who you are at that moment. That answer could be different 5 years from now, but I'm with you on that one. Let's be billionaires.
Well, thank you for that
Wow.
gracious response, because it could sound
You know,
not so good, but
it doesn't have to be bad. Why don't we change that around and say, hey, if it can be a good thing if we use it right. I think it's great. I love it. Ah, I love asking that question. It's so great. You've already given us, you've already given us your website and all of the information, your podcast. So I'll put that onto the description for people to kind of have a look at it. And again, thank you so much. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, or if I'm going to put you on the spot there, but if you want to add anything, we could definitely finish the episode that way as well.
I'm just thankful that you invited me. I really am. It's fun talking with you. These are important issues, and I'm just passionate about kids who have ADHD or autism, and recognizing what their strengths are and what they bring to the world, and what they are incredibly gifted intellectually or intellectually delayed, whether they struggle with their emotions, whoever they are as individual people, you know, they deserve our advocacy and a great education and a good, strong community. And so I'm really honored that you brought me on and you've been a great host. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And I just, again, I love your approach. I love how you speak the real thing. It's not, let's not sugarcoat this. There's some work to be done there. And when you work, and I mean, that's when you know a coach or somebody has had experience. It's not just textbook, but every child has their gift, no matter what that looks like. And when you get to see it, it's such a privilege to work with children, and you finally get them to see that gift, no matter what life has thrown at them. It's so rewarding that we have to help them. We have to be there. We have to support them. And we need to have more of these conversations. So anytime you're willing to come on, let me know. I'd love to have you on, and I'll definitely send people your way for your podcast as well. Let's bust out of this box and just that's it. So thank you again very much. And for everybody listening, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening and watching from. Don't forget to go check out Norrine's podcast and her website as well for all the programs. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.